So yeah, I wish I was reading Mistborn next month because this is perfect for 36, but like I already read this book in September, so I can't be using it again in October. Hello! Welcome back to my channel. My name is Amanda and today we're going to be picking my October TBR. Now I wanted to do something a little bit special. I was looking around at some different TBR games that I could possibly try out for the month of October, and then it hit me one day. I have a very special way that I can pick my own TBR without needing any supplies. I need one supply. Before I get into telling you how I'm going to be doing that, I'd like to start off this video by explaining how I'm able to do that. So I have something that is called Grapheme-Color Synesthesia, which means that when I read, hear, look at, think about numbers specifically, but it also does work with letters, I associate them with colors. And associate is not the correct term to be using, but it is the best word I can use to describe this to someone who does not have synesthesia. I've talked about it with a few people who I know have the same synesthesia as me, and the best way I can describe it to myself is I feel color. But that gets really into conceptual idea land, and sometimes people get really confused by this. This is something that is completely involuntary, consistent. I've had it happen my entire life, and it's something that I'm not making up, first off, and second off, it's something that isn't harmful or isn't going to cause any problems at all for me or my brain or anything like that. Basically what it means is somewhere in my brain some of the wires are getting crossed, and so when I experience one of my senses, sometimes I experience it in a different way. And I say sometimes because every single time I look at numbers or letters or even hear sounds, I experience color, but I don't experience color with like touch or taste or smell or anything like that, whereas some people can. So that's why I say sometimes. Woo! What I thought would be really fun, and I kind of did a test run with a few friends of mine, and so I know it works, is I'm going to be pulling up a random number generator and I'm going to let it pick 5 numbers for me, and based on those 5 numbers, I'm going to find book covers that match what I'm feeling of those colors. Hopefully that makes sense. What some people would say is I'm seeing the colors, but I really don't see them in the sense that I see what's around me. This is hard to explain, and if you'd like me to talk about this way more in depth in a future video, I totally will, but I think for the time being, this is just a test run to see how this works and to see if it's fun. If it works, then maybe we can have a nice little chat about what, as I like to call it, number color synesthesia means to me. For right now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm only going to be looking at numbers greater than 10 and less than 99, because every single number has a color that I experience when I'm around that number. But when you start putting the numbers together, it just starts to be this really cool magical combination of things that really leads itself into being more of a book cover. So for instance, the number 1 is very white and pale on its own, but if I stick it next to a 2, it starts to warm up and be a much more happier white color. It's still white, but it's just a different type of white. And I'm an artist, so colors mean a lot to me, and I'm probably gonna say a lot of words about color that maybe I should explain those as well. I have on my iPad a random number generator, and I have it set up so that it will only select between 10 and 99. Put those 5 numbers with 5 book covers that match as best as possible, because as best as possible is all we can do when color is a concept in my experience, but physical on the paper. I do have 8 books already picked out that I want to be reading this month because of buddy reads or read-alongs or anything like that I am participating in. So it's gonna get a little bit complicated because I will tell you those 8 at the end of the video, but if any of those 8 work for one of these 5, they're gonna be used for those 5, and it's not that complicated, I'm realizing right now. Are you ready? I'm ready. I'm a little bit nervous. Based off of looking at the books that I'm already planning on reading this month, I definitely need some 4s to show up. I also wouldn't mind some 7s or some 1s. I could even use a 6 or a 9, but if an 8 shows up, I'm screwed. Time to select our first number. Let's see, can you see that? Ignore the ads at the bottom of the screen. This app has ads, and let's hit randomize. So our first number is 65, which to me is much like experiencing kind of this blue up here next to a really beautiful yellow, like a warm sand yellow. And I just so happened to not have put this book on my TBR for next month, but really wanted to get to it anyways, and that is Saving the World in Other Extreme Sports, which is the third book in the Maximum Ride series, which I am kind of ashamed that I'm still rereading these books. I read these books as a child and really loved them, and then tried to get back into them in high school and just never could because, well, it's kind of like the equivalent of reading trashy reality TV, but in like a middle grade book. But I just recently started rereading them, and I'm really enjoying myself, and I think that if you're kind of in the mood for some found family and some really early 2000s comical writing, then this would be a good series for you to check out. So we're following in this series Max, who is part bird, part human. She was experimented on by these awful scientists. So she basically is completely a human but has wings and can fly. And her flock, there are 6 of them in total as they try to make it into the world after they've escaped from this school where they were experimented on. Reading these again, there is a movie. I've never seen the movie. I've been told not to watch the movie. The next number that I'm going to be using is 49. Perfect. I needed a 4 and 9 might mess things up a little bit, but we'll see what I can do with that. So a 4 is a very bright red. Like think solitaire hearts and diamonds red. And 9, when you put it next to a 4, it's kind of like this dark navy black color, so almost like a Prussian blue if you are in the art world and know what that means. And for that, I'm going to be reading It by Stephen King. So when I look at this cover, I'm gonna look at it over here because I don't have the cover with me right now. It is definitely more of like a 479, but I figured that's close enough that I can use it for 49. So really what stands out to me is the bright red color in the words is kind of like the 4, and then the dark background is more of the 9 for me, just in case you're wondering. This book I am going to be reading with Olivia Reads a Latte over on her Discord. I'll be helping to moderate that chat, and I'm very excited to be reading this. I have not read it before. I have read other Stephen King books though, so I'm really curious to know where this one's going to fall for me, if it's going to become a new favorite or if it's going to fall by the waysides and I'm going to regret ever reading this ginormous book. So this book I know almost nothing about. I know that there is a killer clown that can manifest as people's biggest fears, and that's about it. I think there's like 2 timelines going on where these people are like kids in the 1980s and then adults, and they've come back to investigate a crime which might have been a murder. So Goodreads doesn't say anything about a crime or a murder, but it does talk about how these people, when they were teenagers, saw this atrocity happen, and now that they're adults, they seem to be being pulled back to this town so that they can almost, it seems, experience it again. So it's definitely going to be some paranormal thriller action going on, which I love, and some great horror elements. Everyone knows this book as like really scary, and I have yet to be really scared in a book besides 1 or 2 instances. So I'm excited to hopefully not sleep well. That's cool. Next one. 35. So this is going to be really interesting. 35, I think, could best be described as looking at a peach. A whole peach. You see that range of like yellows to oranges to pinks, all kind of meddling together and blending, and it's very interesting and beautiful and cool to look at. That I am going to be reading Sins of Empire. Now for this one to fit perfectly as well, I also had to fudge it just a little bit. So this is definitely more of like a 25, maybe even like a 425. That's kind of pushing it. It's closer to 25, honestly. But I'm going to be using it as 35 because it's the closest I can get. Finding that pink next to that yellow is kind of a challenge in book covers, but this is one I've been wanting to read for a while, and of course I once again know nothing about this book, so why am I even telling you to read things? Cool. So I just read the summary of what this book is, and I still can't tell you what this book is, but I do know that it is an epic high fantasy taking place around a war, and that it's ginormous, and that there's 3 of them out, and that I want to read some of Brian McClellan's work because I see his name pop up a lot on big time fantasy lists. Peachy. The next number is 52. Wow, I'm going to be reading some yellow books this month because both 5 and 2 are yellow, and they are a warm yellow, kind of similar to, well, I already told you earlier, a sandy color, not orange yet, but leaning towards orange. You know that like safety yellow that they put in the roads, kind of like that, but then also you got it some hints of like sunshine yellow. When I looked at the list of books I want to read this month, 2 of them actually fit this prompt. So the first one is going to be Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson, and if you look at the cover, there's definitely lots of like sandiness going on, which is what 52 is all about. And then the other one is going to be Race the Sands by Sarah Beth Durst. So Oathbringer is the third and definitely nowhere near the final book in the Stormlight Archives. I am rereading these in preparation for Rhythm of War, which is coming out in November, and I'm really, really excited. So I read all of these about a year or 2 ago, and I loved them. I absolutely love Stormlight. I love Brandon Sanderson. Any of his adult fantasy stuff, I highly recommend. I don't totally know how to tell you anything about Oathbringer because, as I said, it's the third one in the series. I don't have the third one on me because, unfortunately, I just ordered the mass market paperback, but I do have the first 2, so let me show you those. So this is The Way of Kings, which is about the size of my head, and it's a mass market paperback. And this is Words of Radiance, which is just slightly bigger. It's huge. They're both huge. So Race the Sands is by Sarah Beth Durst, and I'm going to be buddy reading this one with a friend, so I was really glad I could manage to make it fit. But this book is a newer release. I believe it was released in 2020, and it is about a desert dwelling settlement. I don't know anything else about this book because if you know me, you know that I don't like to go into books knowing what they're about. I know that there is definitely going to be some kind of race that is going to determine someone's fate and outcome, and then I know, of course, that there's going to be lots of sand. Something that makes me really excited is it is an adult standalone fantasy, so please, let's have more standalone fantasies. Time to roll for our last number, and let's see what that is going to be like. 36. So 36 is really cool. 6, like I said, is very close to this blue color up here, kind of in this middle-y range. It's a very medium cobalt blue, darker than cobalt, but that's the best way I can describe it right now for you. And then 3 is a very pink color, so that's going to be an interesting combination. This one I actually struggled a little bit with because let me tell you, it's kind of hard to find that exact combination. I was gonna fudge it a little bit and use one of my other books, what I'll talk about in a second, but it was too far away for me to actually make it work. So for 36, it is kind of like a pink next to a blue. So I went and scoured my shelves and I realized that a book that I have already pre-ordered that'll be coming to me October 6th is Over the Woodward Wall, which if you have read Middle Game by Seanan McGuire, you know that this is the book that is referenced in that book. So it's going to be an interesting one because it's kind of going to be like a book within a book, but also this book could be read without that one and that one could be read without this one, and both of them are separate entities, but together they make a whole bigger picture. In that whole entire book, there's this whole entire other book reference that is supposed to be this children's book, and that is Over the Woodward Wall. So I will be reading that in October, and I'm really excited because I believe it's the story of these 2 children who are very different from each other, don't know each other, but they live on the same street and they become friends, and then they go on this adventure with each other. And it almost sounds a little bit like Seanan McGuire's other series, the Wayward Children series, where children go through doorways and experience magical adventures. Those are all the books that I got numbers for, and I'm really excited to be reading all of them. So I'm so glad that I could manage to fit them in. Now, after that, I have 5 other books that I really want to read this month, so I will put them in right here at the end. And I thought it would be really fun for me to not only tell you about the books I'm going to read, but try to best put numbers with the covers of these books. So starting out at the top, first book that I'm going to be reading this month, and this is another buddy read, and I'm really excited to be getting to it, is Dune by Frank Herbert. And so Dune is definitely more of like a 26. I was gonna try to use this one for 36, as I mentioned earlier, that I was gonna cheat it a little bit, but there's definitely no pink in here. You could even argue that it's a 426. I know nothing about Dune. I'm not gonna look up anything about Dune. Dune is out there. If you want to find out stuff about Dune, do it on your own time. I want to go into this book completely blind, and I'm excited to, was that a picture? Oh, I love that. This is a really floppy paperback version of Dune, and I'm so excited about it. Next up, I am hoping to read the book Mexican Gothic, which I thought I knew stuff about Mexican Gothic, but now that I'm trying to tell you about it, I really, really do not know anything about Mexican Gothic. This cover is very, very much 4 and 7 next to each other. You might even be able to say 457 because the green leans more towards like an olivey green, and putting the 5 next to the 7 makes that olive color, but just 4 and 7 together perfectly describes this cover. Mexican Gothic, I know, is a story about Gothics. I know that it's a thriller. I think it might even lean into the horror genre. I know it's weird. I know it's creepy. I know tons of people on BookTube have read it. I believe that Olivia Reads a Lattes has read it, and I believe Kayla from Books and Lala has read it. And if I'm correct that they both enjoyed the book. I'm picking it up because Olivia said that it was really, really creepy, and I've been dying to have some more creepiness in my life, especially with October being the month of Halloween. So I'm picking this one up, and I'm thrilled to be reading it. Also this month, I am hoping to be picking up A Darker Shade of Magic, which will be a reread for me, and I am hoping to reread this entire series before the end of the year. I read this series a while ago now. I don't remember exactly how long ago, and it's so magical and so beautifully written and so diverse, and I just love V.E. Schwab and her more adult stuff, so I am glad to be picking this one up. This cover is kind of complicated to describe. When you get these kind of combinations of colors like black, white, and red next to each other, it takes a little bit to get to that pure of a color. This is going to get really, really complicated. The best way I could quickly tell you what this book cover is in my head is to call it 149, but that would not be accurate to the book cover. If I wanted to be as accurate as possible, I would say this book cover is 124869. And I would never ever in my life be able to roll that number and get this book cover. This book is about a man named Kel, and he has a magical cloak that can basically turn into whatever he needs. And he is one of the last of his kind. He's a traveler that can go in between realms. And so there are 4 Londons. There is White London, Red London, Black London, and Grey London. London is much like how we think of our London. It's back in the day, ruled by King George III, and it has no magic whatsoever. Kel is from Red London, and so they have magic. Everything smells like roses. It's handy dandy. It's great. White London is collapsing and dying, and it is slowly trying to fight for control of its magic to keep itself barely alive. And then there's Black London, which is no more. Heck yeah, we also get to meet this girl named Lila. I'm gonna call her Lila because I can't remember right now. Lila, and she is a pirate, and she is wanting to go on an adventure. She basically just wants to live her life however she wants to live her life, and she runs into Kel, and there is stuff that happens. The next book I'm going to be picking up, which will be for my book club. If you want to join us, we read at least 1 book every single month, and honestly it's more like 3 every single month. But this month we are going to be reading Steel Crow Saga, which is such a beautiful cover, and I am really excited to be getting to it because it's been on my list since it came out, and I just needed the excuse of someone pushing me into this book. So this book cover is very, very much 96. It's almost so perfectly 96 that it hurts. Like, it's there. So this book, I actually can't tell you what it's about. My book club picked it out. I give them some options every single month and let them vote on things. They voted on this book, and I think there's going to be some kind of crime, a vast group of friends coming together, magic for sure, possibly animals. I think the author is Filipino. I'm excited to read it. And the final book that I will be hopefully getting to this month is going to be The Two of Swords by K.J. Parker. I have no clue what this book is about. A soldier with a gift for archery, a woman who kills without a second thought, 2 brothers, both unbeatable generals, now fighting for opposite armies. That sounds good to me. I don't know about you, but it sounds hecka good to me. I know that K.J. Parker is a pseudonym for Tom Holt, so if you know him by that name, Maybe you do. I don't know. I don't know him by either name. I want to be reading some more KJ Parker books in the future, and I thought I'd start out with this one because my library had it. So this book cover is very, very much, well, I could have technically used it for $49, but I needed to read it this month more than I need to read this one. So $49 could fit this. $49 might even fit this a little bit better than it fits it. Too late now. I'm really curious to know if the Two of Swords has any reference to tarot in this book, or if it's just kind of something the author thought sounded cool, or what. I don't know. I'm going to be reading it. I'll try to let you know once I'm into the book more. So that's it. Those are all the books I wanted to read in the month of October. I think October is going to be a really good month, and I'm so excited for it, and I hope that you stick around and enjoy this. Let me know if you thought this was a cool concept. Maybe I'll do it again in the future. It wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. And if you'd like to know more information about synesthesia, I will have some links down below where you can read about it. And if you'd ever like me to do a video talking more about my experience living with synesthesia and maybe my story of how I found out that I had it or how it kind of affects my day-to-day life, I'd love to do that video for you all. But I thought this was a fun, creative way to connect it into books, which is what my entire channel is about. Thank you for watching. If you've read any of these books, let me know down below. I'd love to talk to you about them. I don't remember how my outro goes, but until next time, I will talk to all of you in the comments. Bye!